Thank you, Mr. Chairman, Ranking Member, members of the committee. Thank you for the opportunity to testify in support of President Trump's historic $1.5 trillion 2027 budget for the Department of War. The President's budget request reflects the urgency of the moment, addressing both the deferred maintenance of longstanding problems as well as positioning our forces for current and future fights. I'm honored to be joined alongside the Chairman of the Joint Chiefs and Jay Hurst.
You will complicit in the war crime of this administration.
If I may interject, I ask that we have order in the hearing room so we can proceed. I ask the witnesses suspend until the room is cleared. It appears it's cleared. Go ahead, Ms. Secretary.
Thank you.
Just want to, Pakistan. Are you aware of reports that Pakistan are allowing their bases to be used to park Iranian aircraft, General Caine?
Sir, I've seen one report on that.
Well, is it accurate?
Sir, I think based on the variety of classification matters.
Let me just say, do you agree if it is accurate, that is sort of inconsistent with it being a peace mediator?
Sir, I wouldn't want to comment on that based on the ongoing negotiations and Pakistan's role.
Secretary Hegseth, if the mediator is allowing reconnaissance aircraft in Iran to be parked in Pakistani air bases, do you think that's consistent with being a fair mediator?
I wouldn't want to get in the middle of these negotiations.
Yeah.
I want
well, I
maximum
do.
efficacy
I
for
want
our
to get in
people.
the middle of these negotiations. I don't trust Pakistan as far as I can throw them. If they actually do have Iranian aircraft parked in Pakistan bases to protect Iranian military assets, that tells me we should be looking maybe for somebody else to mediate. No wonder this damn thing is going nowhere. So, you know, I appreciate all you've done. I'm very supportive of it. But when it comes to Pakistan and China, enough already. Thank you. Thank you. I just want to start off with saying that these military operations against Iran have been spectacular. In a matter of months, we have degraded the largest state sponsor of terrorism beyond what I thought was possible, probably more to come. Ms. Secretary, 900 pounds of 60% enriched uranium, do we all agree that's what Iran has buried somewhere?
In this format, some of that should be classified, so I wouldn't comment on the exact amount of anything.
Okay, well, it's just pretty well known. They brag about it. Is it possible they could have 60% highly enriched uranium without them cheating in the past?
We know in every context of what Iran has undertaken, they've lied and cheated.
The answer is no. Everything that Obama and Biden did was designed to keep it to a civilian nuclear program. There is no way in hell they can have 60% highly enriched uranium unless they cheat. So everything y'all did failed. And you want to criticize? You failed. You allowed Iran to be a threshold nuclear nation. Everything you did failed. Missiles, Diego Garcia. Did they shoot missiles at Diego Garcia, General Caine, the Iranians?
Yes, sir, they shot a few.
Under the protocols we had in place, were they supposed to be able to do that?
Without reviewing the fine print, I believe the answer is no.
No, they weren't. You failed there. You failed to stop Iran from being a nuclear threshold nation. You failed to stop Iran from having missiles that could go thousands of miles. Why should we listen to you? Bottom line here.
Chairman, thank you all for being here. Mr. Hurst, on April 29th, as you indicated to the ranking member, you said that the Iran war had cost $25 billion in total. You reaffirmed that today. Do you have any other updated costs or projections since that testimony that you've given? Outside reporting estimates have indicated that the war costs could be $1 billion a day. Do you have anything to share?
Yeah, thanks for the question, sir. So at the time of testimony in front of the ask, it was $25 billion. But the joint staff team and the comptroller team are constantly looking at that estimate. And so now we think it's closer to 29. That's because of updated repair and replacement of equipment costs, and also just general operational costs to keep people in theater.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Mr. Secretary, when can you share more formal accounting on the cost of the war with Congress and with this committee?
We'll share what we can. I think we've updated on that number this morning, but when it's relevant and required, we will share it.
I think this would be the format that it would be required. Mr. Secretary, on that same day, April 29th, you testified that the current ceasefire meant that the 60-day calendar with the War Powers Resolution was paused. Who are the parties to the ceasefire?
Right now, we are in that same ceasefire as of right now.
That wasn't the question. Who are the parties to
It
the
would be the
ceasefire?
United States and the regime in Iran.
How many pages is the ceasefire? What deal points? I'm not asking you to share the contents. I guess what I'm trying to ask is, how do we know that the ceasefire is active or not active without any documentation?
We know it's evident, and the ceasefire is in effect.
But is it pages? Is it 15 points? There's been different points that have moved around. Is there any other, how do we know you just trust that the president knows that the ceasefire is active or not active?
As you know, for the most part, a ceasefire means the fire is ceasing, and we know that has occurred while negotiations occur, and there are lots of different discussions with our negotiating team that are happening. I'm there when those discussions are occurring, different drafts, different perspectives. So it's a very dynamic situation where a negotiated settlement could be the outcome here, where Iran does not have nuclear capabilities. And from the Department of War perspective, we're here to support those options.
On May 5th, you announced the launch of Project Freedom, which is a new exercise where CENTCOM will help coordinate ship traffic and guide commercial ships through the strait. President Trump then announced the operation concluded that evening. Now it seems that we may be revisiting that. Can you give us the latest on Project Freedom?
Well, as it pertains to battlefield options, we don't disclose those types of things. But ultimately, as the president stated publicly in his truth, at the request of the Pakistanis and given the options in the negotiation, it was paused, and it's an option we could always recommence should the commander-in-chief want us to.
Is the theory to create more ceasefires or more projects just to evade the War Powers Act?
The theory of the entire case is to prevent Iran from having a nuclear weapon. And if that has to be done kinetically and militarily, the Department of War is locked and loaded and ready to do that. If it happens through Project Freedom, where you move commerce through, if it happens through a negotiated deal, the president was very clear, even yesterday. This is actually quite simple. Iran will never have a nuclear weapon, one way or another, and we're here to support as one tool of the whole of government to make that happen.
General Caine, the depleted munitions have been a subject of some of the discussions that you've even heard here today. With respect to stockpiles that we have around the world, key regions like the Indo-Pacific and the Middle East, can you give us an update? What are you hearing from the combatant commands about their munitions status around the world?
Well, sir, we have sufficient munitions for what we're tasked to do right now. That's what I hear from the COCOMs. What I will say is I will always want more, so I appreciate the effort of this committee and the Congress. We're always going to want more munitions.
Secretary Hegseth, what are you doing to support the involved services to recap their losses?
We're submitting a $1.5 trillion budget that'll remake the department and ensure that every warfighter in the future has exactly what they need, and we're never in a fair fight. And I take issue with the characterization that munitions are depleted in a public forum. That's not true. And ultimately, we have all the munitions needed to execute what we need to execute, and we're going to ensure that we supercharge that going into the future.
I think you've heard differences from both sides of the aisle on that point. Yield back, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, gentlemen. Judge Carter.
Being consulted. You said just a few moments ago, Mr. Secretary, we control the strait. But it's clear that reopening the Strait of Hormuz for commercial traffic eludes us, in no small part because Iran retains a robust stockpile of cheap, lethal Shahed drones, and they are getting help from our adversaries in rebuilding them. What is your plan for reopening the Strait of Hormuz, Mr. Secretary?
I would just note that the majority of your question was highly disingenuous and loaded with suggestions that I very much don't agree with. From the beginning,
Please feel free, sir, to pick any one of those
from the
things.
beginning, we've been very clear about the military objectives and
Yes.
the underlying strategic objective, which is preventing Iran from getting a nuclear weapon.
Yes.
Take, for example, the fact that Iranians' conventional Navy, they had aircraft carriers with Shahed drones on them before this started. They had full-on destroyers and battleship capabilities, none of which they have anymore. And
Did the
their inability
Iranian
to-
Navy have aircraft carriers?
Iranian Navy had 3 drone aircraft carriers. The Iranian Navy
They
had
had
11
launch
submarines.
platforms for drones, sure.
They had 11 submarines.
And you've
They had
sunk
a
all of the
terror
regular Navy. Great, good.
They retain fast boat capabilities, which they've always had. We understand that, which we can control for and will. We've degraded almost completely their defense industrial base capabilities. The idea that they control anything, you can terrorize something, you can
Yes.
hold it at issue with piracy, as I've talked about at the Pentagon podium time and time again.
Correct.
That doesn't mean you control it. We control what goes in and out, and we control whether or not we have to restart conflict. The president does as well.
Mr.
So
Secretary-
we're the ones that will manage where this goes in the future, and they have very limited ability to set the tempo or respond to it, and that gives the president a lot of options to ensure that Iran never gets a nuclear weapon.
The connection between their ability to close the Strait of Hormuz using fast boats and Shahed drones and our strategic goal, shared broadly, to prevent them from ever having a usable nuclear weapon is utterly unclear to me. And my question was, what's the plan for reopening the Strait of Hormuz to commercial traffic, given
Shared broadly, but
skyrocketing
never
prices?
executed. Shared broadly, but never executed, because previous administration didn't have the willingness to actually do what it would take. And when Iran was at its weakest moments following the 12-day war, but still wanted the pursuit of a nuclear capability, President Trump made the courageous decision to go at their conventional umbrella and shield, which they were using to protect their nuclear program, which we knew came with threats and branches and sequels.
My
which we've
concern,
accounted
Mr.
for.
Secretary, is that you've achieved a series of tactical successes, but are on the verge of a strategic loss, because we are now negotiating.
I just think it's so
a
foolish.
demand-
Here we are in a committee in the United States Senate, 74 days in, and you're talking about strategic loss. We have the ability to
74
defeat a
days in.
47-year threat of a pursuit of a nuclear weapon. We have more leverage than we've ever had. We've had incredible battlefield successes, and you're talking about a strategic loss,
Mr.
cloaked in
Secretary.
disingenuous questions.
Mr.
This
Secretary.
is how you
Mr.
undercut
Secretary.
efforts that could otherwise and are otherwise
I am
being
not
very
your
effective.
enemy, sir. I am not your adversary. I share your goal of preventing Iran from ever having a usable nuclear weapon. To finish my sentence, control of the Strait of Hormuz, the ability to degrade our partners and allies' gas and oil production capabilities through cheap drones, the ability to harass and harry commercial shipping remains in Iran's hands.
Senator Murphy.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you all for being here. Let me give you a chance, Mr. Secretary, to answer Senator Coons' question, which is a really simple one. How are we going to get the strait open? Because nothing matters more to our constituents than doing something about these spiraling gas prices, which are bankrupting families and farmers all across the country. And maybe let me ask it this way. This is the first time you've come before this committee, but in other briefings, people that work for you have told us in plain terms that there is no military mechanism to reopen the strait, that ultimately it will be a political decision made by Iran. And I think you're confirming that here today by suggesting that it will be economic pressure that will create a political imperative inside Tehran to open the strait. So can you just confirm for the committee that there is not a military mechanism or means to reopen the strait, that ultimately we have to essentially use diplomacy, economic diplomacy in this case, in order to convince Iran to make the decision to reopen the strait?
I would say, Senator, there most certainly are military means by which we could open the strait, both on targets on land, and also with what we do with our naval capabilities, not to mention our naval blockade.
Why haven't
demonstrated
you
by,
done, if that's true, and that's not what has been testified to us in private briefings, why haven't you done that already?
ultimately, a long-term, a preferred long-term approach would be a deal where they open it up, where they stop being pirates of international waters and allow countries from all nations to flow. You know, these aren't U.S. ships that are being blockaded there. These are ships from all around the world, creating much more pressure for other countries than ours. So the bad guy here is Iran, who's closing the strait through piracy effectively, because they really only have fast boat capabilities. We're blockading them. None of their stuff's getting out. They're feeling all the pressure.
Okay, so here's my follow-up question. You don't worry that through a study of history, you might come to the conclusion that you are overestimating their willingness to cave based upon economic pressure. The Russians believed years ago that Ukraine would cave because of the economic pressure they were putting on Ukraine. We thought the North Vietnamese would cave because of the economic pressure we were putting on them. Your own intelligence estimates, as has been reported, suggest that, in fact, the Iranians are in a position to hold out for potentially years. This is a high-risk strategy to hope that this economic pressure will eventually cause them to voluntarily reopen the strait when there's plenty of evidence from military history to show that countries that are being attacked or invaded or occupied are actually willing to put up with a whole lot of economic misery in order to preserve national pride.
Well aware. We understand all of those historical case studies, and it's not just economic pressure. There's military pressure, diplomatic pressure. We certainly have a lot more military pressure we can bring to bear if the president were to choose to do so. I think there are a lot of different dynamics cards that the president can play, holding all of them to ensure even greater economic pressure or even greater military pressure in Iran. And they know that, and that's why the negotiations are serious and ongoing right now about giving up their nuclear capability, because they understand that.
And the problem is time is not on our side here. I believe you are being way too optimistic in your assessment of their potential to cave. But if this goes on for another 30 days, there are going to be thousands more farms that will go bankrupt. There are going to be families that are going to be ruined. And so time is not on our side. And I just don't believe that Iran is ready to capitulate yet. And if they capitulate in a year, there's going to be a whole lot of families and businesses that are ruined in the United States. General Caine, let me finally ask you a question about what seems to be a difference of opinion between the intelligence services that you rely on and the public statements of the President of the United States with respect to our war objectives. The Secretary and others in the President's cabinet have said very clearly that our war objective is to destroy Iran's missile and drone program. The President said just a week ago that Iran maybe had 18 to 19% of their missile capacity left. But there is public reporting suggesting that our intelligence agencies say that Iran still has 70% of their missile and drone capability, which would be a failure of our objectives if that were to be true. What can you tell us about the number of missiles and drones that they have left, and do you dispute that intelligence estimate?
Sir, I'm not going to comment, with deep respect for the question, I'm not going to comment in this forum on what may or may not have been opined on by the IC, which would suggest a leak or a confirmation of any intel. So while I appreciate the question, I hope you'll also appreciate my not answering it.
Well, then just give me the President said that 80% of
Yeah, I'm not going to comment on BDA on either way, sir.
Well, then how do we or the American public assess the success of the mission when you've stated publicly the purpose of the mission is to destroy their missile and drone capability? How do we assess whether we should continue funding this if you can't state?
Well, I'm not going to answer what you guys in the Congress considers the decision criteria around continued funding or not. What I know is that I've not read the report that you're talking about. All of our battle damage assessment matters are classified, and it would be inappropriate for me to comment in this forum on that. And I appreciate the question, but I'm not going to answer it.
Let me just put it to Secretary Hegseth. The President said that 80% of their missile capacity had been destroyed. This public report says it's only 30%. Can you give us an answer as to what the real number is?
I mean, I would answer the same way as the chairman.
Not talking to this committee about the damage assessments?
Not
Okay.
validating leaked information that could be wrong or not wrong. Why would I validate what
Well, no, just tell us
people
what the
may
number
leak or
is.
not leak?
You're-
This is
you've-
not a classified
well, you
setting.
said
We don't
you're-
talk about those things. And you
Senator
like to talk
Murphy.
about them on TV. We don't talk about them here.
I would perhaps suggest that, that some of these questions and responses are perhaps best in a classified setting.